for joining us for Bible study tonight. We're just having a good time here. All is well. So thank you for coming, all of you on Facebook, for joining us here for our Tuesday night Bible study. So we're going to jump right into the Word. I'm actually going to start off with reading you an article. So this article is called, this isn't the title of my Bible study, but this article is called Declutter Your Life. I just thought it was really interesting because some certain things that I've been thinking about and Holy Spirit has been telling me to change and everything, and this happened to come across as one of my daily devotions. So I was like, okay. So it's called Declutter Your Life. And the scripture is Matthew 25:21. It says, his Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You are faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. If you're believing Yahweh for a new car, but the one you have is junky and the lining is ripped out of the roof, French fries are all stuck in the seats, and straw wrappers tucked in little places, it's dirty and hasn't been washed since 2008, but you're believing Yahweh for a new one. The principle from the word of Yahweh is to clean that car up and take care of what you've got so he can bless you with better. Empty out all the trash, wash those seats off, vacuum up the floor, go get the car washed, do something. Take care of what you've got and show him that you're going to honor him with the small things so he can bless you with the bigger things. Recently, I read an article from an organization expert about the cost of clutter. She says, clutter causes you to feel overwhelmed and depressed. Clutter robs you of energy and steals 50% of your storage space and makes life harder. You have to look longer, travel further, and dig deeper to find out what you're looking for. Clutter takes away the peace and the beauty of a home. It's been said that the average individual wastes over $3,000 a year on disorganization. That's a lot of money. Finish what you start. Don't look at all the messes in your house and clean a little bit in every room. No, start with one room. Focus on that one room until you feel good about it, and let it bring you peace. Grab your phone, set your alarm for 20 minutes, see what you can get done in 20 minutes time. Do it again the next day, and do it again the next day. And you know what? After you've been doing something for 20 minutes every day for a month, that's 10 hours of getting organized. You won't even miss the 20 minutes. So that's something you can do. Just start. Focus on cleaning out the clutter in your life. Clutter can be found anywhere, and it's not just your physical surroundings. Anything taking up space in your mind that is left unfinished produces clutter. Clutter blocks success. So not only do we need to finish what we start and take care of what we've got, but we need to clean the clutter out of our lives. Clutter can be any disagreement between the way you desire your life to be and the way it actually is. Physical clutter is easy to understand. A car full of trash, bills piled up, boxes needing to be unpacked, dishes in the sink, a messy room in your house, etc. However, mental clutter can be even more limiting. Mental clutter is anything taking up space in your mind that is left unfinished. It could be a phone call that needs to be made, an apology that needs to be said, a relationship that needs to be ended, a book that needs to be finished, a bill that needs to be paid, a thank you note that needs to be written. You can accomplish more of your goals when your clutter is cleaned up. Why? Because your mind isn't preoccupied with all that you need to be doing. It's done. You're at peace. Now you can focus on the bigger picture. So, the title of what we're going to be talking about tonight is Get the Clutter Out. And, that was based on a lot of a physical aspect. You hear people that have their houses that are cluttered with stuff and have their cars cluttered with stuff and whatever. But interesting in that article when I was reading it, and she's talking about getting your car back into shape and stuff. And the first thing she says is, empty out all the trash. Well, I'm jumping ahead of myself here in this, but when it comes to clutter in your mind, because that's the main thing I'm going to focus on, you got to empty out all the trash in your mind. There's a lot of thoughts that we allow to go into our mind that is actually trash. And we need to make sure we're emptying the trash out of our mind. So, the definition of clutter. Clutter is to crowd untidily. It's a condition of disorder. It's an untidy state. Clutter is to fill or cover with scattered or disordered things that impede movement or reduce effectiveness. Clutter is a lot of things in a messy state, especially things that are not useful or necessary. So I want you to recall those two things. We're going to go back to it in a little bit. But that first one was being how clutter impedes movement or reduces effectiveness, and then how it also is things that are not useful or necessary. We're going to revisit that in a little bit. So what are there? There are types of clutter. Well, if you talk to organizational experts and psychologists and stuff like that, they have a tendency to put clutter into 5 different types. So they say that there are 5 different types of clutter that are actually destroying people's peace of mind. And most of this clutter is invisible. The first one I was just talking about in this article is physical clutter. So we just went over that in cars, houses, maybe somebody's desk at work. You know, a lot of people are known for that, having a messy desk at work and stuff like that. So cars, houses, messy desk at work, you know, physical stuff, a shed, a garage. I remember one time Scott and I were driving home from somewhere, and actually I know exactly where it is because every time we drive home from New Hampshire we pass by this house, and it's been like this literally since, let me see, since the day pretty much Scott and I got married, so 27 years, this house has been like this. And you look at this house and all you see is clutter. You look in the windows and you just see stacks of books, and I mean, you can't even see into the house. The yard is that way, the driveway's that way, the garage is that way. I mean, have you ever seen garages that are so cluttered with stuff you can't even get the car in it, you know? So that's physical clutter. The second one, which probably many of us in here probably deal with on a daily basis, is digital clutter. I never would have known there was digital clutter, okay, until you got technology. Digital clutter, which can mean thousands of unread emails. Well, that's considered clutter. Or all these folders that are open on your laptop, all these tabs, you know, you got like 15 tabs open up on the top, and 12 of them you're not even using anymore. But all this clutter in tabs, folders that, you know, you create all these new folders for different things, and a lot of them you don't even need anymore, so they have a tendency to be clutter. The last 3 are the ones that kind of all meld together into one, but that's the one I'm going to focus on tonight. So the third one is emotional clutter. And emotional clutter deals with negative patterns and beliefs. The fourth one is mental. That one deals with fears. It deals with to-do lists. It deals with concerns about things. It's anything that is filling your head. You ever wake up in the middle of the night and your mind's going with all these thoughts? It's clutter. It's a lot of the times it's just mental clutter. And the fifth one is spiritual. And that one has to do with lack of forgiveness, lack of peace, lack of love. That can all become clutter. So, what do we need to do? We need to declutter our thoughts. We need to declutter our mind. So it says, we all know this scripture, but it says in 2 Corinthians 10:5, inasmuch as we refute arguments and theories and reasonings and every proud and lofty thing that sets itself up against the true knowledge of Yahweh, and we lead every thought and purpose away captive into the obedience of Yeshua the Messiah. Basically, take thoughts captive. That's number one key on how we start to go forward in the process of decluttering our mind, decluttering our thoughts. We need to take thoughts captive. Every single day, all of us are bombarded with thousands of thoughts. And most of the time, those thoughts are from the enemy. And that's why the Bible's so strong and says you need to take thoughts captive. Because what happens if you don't take a thought captive? That thought comes in, especially if it's a bad thought. You know, you have a bad thought about a person or yourself or whatever. That bad thought comes in, and if you don't take it captive instantly, and you allow it just to even start to take root, then you start to dwell on it. And how many times do we know that the enemy is good at making a mountain out of a molehill? So it starts with this one little thought about something, and you don't take it captive, and instead it goes off, did I say that right? A mountain and a molehill, right? And you don't take it captive, it takes root, and you find yourself rethinking the thought and rethinking the thought, and before you know it, what was just some tiny little incident that was really trivial in the whole scheme of things is now completely blown out of proportion. And it's this huge mountain that is actually not even realistic. It's not even the truth. But that's because we didn't take the thought captive. So a cluttered mind includes, actually it includes, but it's the basis of a cluttered mind, are thoughts that waste our time and energy. Think about it. If we're having negative thoughts, if we're entertaining thoughts of the enemy, they're not energizing us. They're not a productive way of us using our time. I don't know about you, but I can speak from experience that if I got upset about something and say something somebody did, I know that's probably one of the number one things that happen, but I got upset at something somebody did, and instead of dealing with it the way I know the Word tells me to deal with it, I took that thought and I just let it keep going over in my mind. Just kept letting go over, to the point where it actually changed my whole demeanor. It changed my attitude, changed my thinking of the person. And even though the thought was not true, it wasn't a truthful thought, it was an unrealistic thought, I started to believe the thought. So I started to believe that thought about that individual, and it wasn't even true. It wasn't even realistic. I allowed the enemy to put this thought in my mind, and instead of taking it captive, I just kept replaying it. Because it was something that they had irked me, okay, and it was like, okay, but they irked me, and I just kept focusing on the irk and not taking it captive. And before I knew it, it was all blown out of the proportion. The person wasn't even in my vicinity anymore, but I'm angry at them. And this could have been something that had taken place a few days prior. And I had no challenge until that day when I allowed that thought to stick. And I didn't do what I was supposed to do with it. And I found myself angry at the person, and the person wasn't even there anymore. But then that evening, the person shows up, and I'm angry at them actually for no reason. And they're like, why are you angry at me? Did I do something? And it's like, no, you actually didn't. But because I didn't take this thought captive, I allowed it to stick. And like I said, and even to begin with, it wasn't even realistic. It wasn't even truthful. The devil will take things and blow them out of proportion. Why? Because he's trying to cause strife and division. He's trying to separate relationships. He's trying to destroy relationships. He's trying to get in, and if he can cause strife and division, we know what happens with that. Okay, if he can go in and get into that, there goes the power. So that's why we need to be making sure that we're taking thoughts captive. And if you think about it too, I know for myself personally, I wasted so much unnecessary time and energy getting all riled up about this thought and not casting it out. Afterwards, I wasn't a happy camper myself. I mean, really, when you're like, I don't know, in your own thought about something that's upsetting you, do you ever feel good about it actually at the end of it? When you come out on the other side, you don't ever feel good about it. You yourself are miserable. So you've not only made yourself miserable, but now you've just compounded so much. And whatever that you're angry about or got upset about, whether it's a person or whatever, that person's fine. They're continuing on. They probably had the happiest day of their life while you ruined your day for no reason. And it's all totally unrealistic. It's all totally not even, it's what the enemy wants us to do. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous to be so preoccupied with wrong thoughts that it's wasting our time and energy, because focusing on that negative thought, spending all that time, all that energy on that negative thought, took us away from what really needed our time and energy and caused us to miss maybe even a moed with somebody or something. So a cluttered mind includes the biggest thing, like I said, the thoughts that waste our time and energy, focusing on the negative about ourselves and others, worrying about things, Holding on to negative emotions and experiences, including resentment, past, hurt, anger, and sadness. And I know this one is a big one with people. You know, I think we might have been talking about it on Sabbath, but I know we've mentioned it before, and Dad has said it, and Mom has said it. But, you know, if you're still angry at your mother or your father over something they did 30 years ago, if you're still allowing what somebody did to you 30 years ago to still impact your life and who you are now, that's serious. You got to get yourself over that, because you yourself are the ones that are captured in a dungeon. While whoever that individual was, a parent, a boss, maybe a childhood friend, whoever that was, that person's gone on. And maybe even though they may have had, maybe they were actually in the wrong, or maybe themselves were actually, you know, having things that they're dealing with and challenges. If they've gotten over it and you haven't, you're the one that's kept yourself imprisoned in that all those years, and it does you no good. So holding on to negative emotions, experiences, including resentment. Resentment's a big one. A lot of times when something happens to an individual, they harbor resentment. And resentment can be costly. Resentment can actually be deadly if allowed to go on too long. Past hurts. You know, I'm sure all of us in here, maybe for the example of Natanel, because he's young, have experienced some type of past hurt. If we're still holding on to that hurt, like I was just saying, that maybe a childhood friend did, or a parent or a relative or whatever, past hurt is allowing us to have a cluttered mind that is dangerous. Anger, sadness, there's all these things, these negative emotions that clutter our minds and cause us not to be as effective as we should be. And that's why when the spiritual part of that, that involves the whole thing of lack of forgiveness and lack of peace. Because emotional and mental affects your spiritual. If you're still cluttered up by a past hurt or a resentment or an anger, you're not walking in the spiritual part the way you're supposed to be. So now you're dealing with a lack of forgiveness, which is harmful to you, or a lack of love or whatever it is. So it affects everything. And really important that we not let it affect our spiritual walk. Because our spiritual walk, the way we're supposed to be living spiritually, is the most important thing. That's how we're supposed to be an impact in this world. That's how we're supposed to make a difference. That's how we're supposed to show the love of Yeshua to another individual. Another thing that a cluttered mind includes is keeping a mental to-do list. Now, I know probably a lot of us have that. I know I'm good for one. All my lists are in my head. And it's like, no, I got to start getting in the habit of writing them down. Because what happens? When you're having mental lists, you're continuously going over the list. You know, like I said, you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and it's like, oh, this I got to do, this I got to do, this I got to do. If you just write it down, this isn't part of my thing, but I know when I was reading some other things about this last night, and they go on to, you know, naturally speaking and stuff like that, about how to clear clutter out and get yourself back on the right path. I know one of the biggest things they were talking about was like when people that journal or people that write stuff down. So it's like, when you have a mental to-do list, you have all this stuff, write it down. Because what happens when you write something down? If you write down that list, it's now gone out of here, and you've freed up the space, so to speak, in your mind, and it relaxes you. It's like, okay, I know I've got that written down, so I no longer need to clutter my thinking with this. I can now relax and just be at peace and go back to sleep type of thing. So keeping a mental to-do list. So with that one, let's take a look in Luke. Luke chapter 10, verse 30, starting in verse 38. So Luke chapter 10, verse 38. And this is the story of Mary and Martha, two sisters. So, verse 38 says, "Now while they were on their way, it occurred that Yeshua entered a certain village. And a woman named Martha received and welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister named Mary, who seated herself at the Lord's feet and was listening to his teaching. But Martha, overly occupied and too busy, was distracted with much serving. And she came up to him and said, Lord, is it nothing to you that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me to lend a hand and do her part along with me. I would say at that moment, Martha was having some not nice thoughts about her sister, okay? And we know, come on, think about it. So here you're expecting a house guest, okay? And you and your sister are supposed to be in the kitchen cooking this big meal. And all of a sudden your sister takes off. And you're like, where'd she go now? You know, it would be one of those things. Where'd she go now? Because your sister's always taking off somewhere. So she goes and takes off, and you go and find her, and she's sitting relaxing on the floor with your guest. While you're busy in the kitchen sweating and cooking and doing that, you know, that has the opportunity to stir up some thoughts. And to be like, I am sitting here doing all this work while my lazy sister is sitting on the floor just socializing, okay? Not saying that's what Martha was thinking about Mary, but you could tell, you know, she was not really happy about her sister, because what does she do? She goes and says to Yeshua, is it nothing to you? Now she says to him, now see, negative thoughts, bad thoughts, cluttered mind, preoccupied, and it says in the Amplified, she was overly occupied. It doesn't just say occupied, it says she was overly occupied. So that means she was too occupied with stuff, and she was too busy. So she was overly occupied and too busy with the fact that Yeshua is there and they needed to serve him food. And what happened? She was distracted. She was distracted with much serving. She was distracted off of the real purpose of what was taking place in her house. Her sister Mary had the right idea. She knew. She had the Lord there. She knew to be sitting at his feet because that's where the real food was. That's where she was going to sit and just be able to take in everything from him. But because Martha had a cluttered mind and was thinking too much and was overly occupied, she got distracted from the true reason why this incident was even taking place. She got distracted off the fact that Yeshua himself had come into her house to impart into her. And she was missing in on that with those negative thoughts. Because she says to him, okay, is it nothing to you? Okay, you're saying to Yeshua, is it nothing to you? Do you not even care that this is happening to me? How many times do people say that to Yahweh? Do you not care what is happening? Don't you see? Do you not care that so-and-so did this to me or so-and-so that did that to me? Which is not true at all. But she says, is it nothing to you that my sister has left me to serve alone? And then says to him, she's not asking, she says to him, tell her then to help me. So she's actually kind of ordering him around, saying, listen, you don't even care what's going on here. You need to go and tell her to get in here and help me. Okay, she had some negative thoughts that were going through her mind that was cluttering her. Tell her then to help me, to lend a hand and do her part along with me. Mary was doing her part. Sitting at his feet, listening to him, she was doing her part. Martha was missing out on all that because of negative thoughts. For verse 41, but the Lord replied to her by saying, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. There is need of only one, or but a few things. Mary has chosen the good portion, that which is to her advantage, which shall not be taken away from her. So right there, because of a cluttered mind, because guarantee she was given negative thoughts about her sister, probably some emotions were running a little high there, and Yeshua says to her, there is need of only one thing. Do you recognize what that need is? But because you're so cluttered, because you're allowing so many negative thoughts to go through your mind, you're missing out on the fact that there is need of only one thing. That which is to her advantage, and that which shall not be taken away from her. You know, if you think about that, that's a powerful little incident right there. It's a powerful little way to show that when we allow clutter to distract us, it causes us to miss out on the things that really matter. It causes us to miss out on the important things. It causes us to maybe even miss out, instead of on building a relationship and making it stronger, it causes us to do the exact opposite, because we become so distracted and cluttered by negative thoughts. Clutter distracts us by drawing our attention away from what our focus should be on. It makes it more difficult to relax, both physically and mentally. In essence, mess causes stress. Think about it. When your mind is just constantly going, even just on a normal basis, even if it's not even negative thoughts that you're having, or focusing on a fear or a hurt or whatever, just your mind being cluttered with the everyday things of life. This has got to be done. I got to do this. This came up. Just that, when it's one thing after another, has the potential for it to cause stress. All that mess going on in your mind, and if you think about it, it is mess. Negative thoughts, negative emotions, all of that is mess. It's, like I just said in this article, it's trash. You got to empty the trash out of your head in order to move on the way you should. Mess causes stress. But one of the things that we have to help us to focus on the things we're supposed to focus on and get this clutter out of our mind is in Isaiah 26. This right here, and we know this is our answer for every need. This gives us the instruction on how to do anything that ever comes up in our life. The Word is the answer. I think it was on Sabbath that we had touched on when we were talking about the power of our words. Well, that's another reason why you've got to be so prevalent on taking thoughts captive. Because usually what happens after, if you don't take a thought captive, it comes out your mouth. And we know about the power of our words. And if we let a word come out of our mouth to either the individual that we're having a negative thought about, or another person, we air that mess to another person, we allow those words to come out. Not only does Yahweh know those words came out, but the devil knows those words came out. And we're very well aware of the fact that those words came out. And knowing how much power there is in our words, we got to make sure we're not a participant in that. We got to make sure that we're not participating in these negative thoughts, that we're not participating in the resentment, in the past hurts, and the angers, and the worries, or whatever it is. We got to make sure we're not participating in that. But if we allow ourselves to get to the point where we let it come out as words, and like I said, we know how much power is in our words. Words is what create. We said it on Saturday. Yahweh said, light be, and light was. Everything that Yahweh did, he said with a word, and it happened. We were made in his image and his likeness. And even though we may not see it 100% of the time or have the revelation on it, but just like us, when we say, it happens. Even if we don't see it happening in the natural, it is happening. The word that you released into the atmosphere is doing something. It is taking root somewhere, and it is causing something to start to manifest. When that word is released, words always create, no matter what. That's the way it is. You can't release a word, and it just boom, and it's gone. It does nothing. Every word that comes out of your mouth creates something. It either creates for the good, or it creates for the bad. It either creates for victory, or it creates for defeat and failure. It either creates for health and healing, or it creates for sickness and disease, and eventually death. Your words are very powerful. So if you're not in a position where you've taken a thought captive, and you've now released that thought into the atmosphere about an individual, that word has now gone forth into the atmosphere. What you've said about that individual or situation or whatever it may be, that you have voiced that negative thought about, you've now given that negative thought power. And in essence, if you've given that negative thought power, eventually, because words create, what you spoke is going to create. And that is a serious, serious thing. You don't want to be in that position, because eventually it is going to manifest and come to pass. So you get upset about a situation. Say, I don't know. Say something happens with the car. I know this happens a lot with people, but you're driving down the street and all of a sudden, something happens, by illustration only. Something happens with your car and you start hearing a clunking sound, a glug, 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 and it goes. Well, people in the world, a lot of times their common reaction is to call the car a name, which they never understood that. The car doesn't even know what you're saying to it. A lot of times people are like, oh, this dumb car, I'm so fed up with this car. Well, you're releasing powerful words into the atmosphere, no matter what it is. Whether you call the car dumb, a person dumb, an animal dumb, whatever it is, you get upset about something and you have a negative word that comes out of your mouth, that word is now created something to happen. So the individual gets upset and says, oh, this dumb car, it never works. Well, guess what you're going to end up having? You're going to end up having a dumb car. Well, not a dumb car. Cars don't have thought processes, but you're going to have a car that is eventually not going to work on you anymore, because words create. Well, think of how much more powerful all that is if you allow that negative comment to come out of your mouth about a person. Regardless of what they've did, whether they were in the wrong or if they weren't in the wrong or if they were in the right, that negative comment that you made come out against a person is going to have the power to create something. So, Isaiah 26:3. But like I said, we can change that all like that. And then we can do it by the word. So Isaiah 26:3 says, you will guard him and keep him in perfect and constant peace, whose mind, both its inclination and its character, is stayed on you, because he commits himself to you, leans on you, and hopes confidently in you. So trust in the Lord, commit yourself to him, lean on him, hope confidently in him forever. For the Lord Yahweh is an everlasting rock, the rock of ages. So I'm going to focus on verse 3 for a moment, where it says, you will guard him and keep him in perfect and constant peace, whose mind is stayed on him. You're only going to be guarded and kept in perfect peace if your mind is stayed on him, if your thoughts are stayed on him properly. And then that's where he will guard you and have perfect peace. So, what does the word stayed mean? Stayed means to remain in the same place. It means to remain in a specified state or position. And that part of the definition is what, to me, is the most important part. To remain in a specified state or position. You remain in a position that you're going to keep your mind, no matter what, stayed on him. You're going to keep your thoughts, no matter what, stayed on him. You get into that state, in that position, that no matter what the enemy tries to tell you, because we know that the enemy is a liar. So whatever he's telling you about a situation, about a person, it's not the truth. It's all lies. But you got to stay in a state, got to stay in a position where your mind is stayed on him. Your thoughts are stayed on him. So that if a negative thought tries to come, your mind is stayed on him. And you can take that thought captive like that. And what is guaranteed to happen? He will guard you. He will guard you from the evil one. He will guard you and keep you in peace. He'll keep you in shalom. Like I said earlier, when you're having a negative thought about something, well, I would hope that most people, well, not most people, but that everybody, if they're having a negative thought about somebody, that it wouldn't bring them joy and happiness. Okay, I'm just saying. Okay? Oh, she's so lazy. I can't stand her. Oh, I'm so happy about that thought. Okay? No. For most people, that shouldn't be a happy, joyous thing. It shouldn't be a peaceful thing. It shouldn't give you peace that you think your sister or your friend or somebody is lazy or whatever, okay? That should not bring you peace at all. That's why you've got to keep your mind and your thoughts stayed on him so that you will have peace. Because like I said, whenever we find ourselves being fighting a negative thought or having negative thoughts or being negative, or we just get ourselves caught up in this mess of whatever. We're our own worst enemies, really. We get ourselves caught up in this mess of woe is me type of thing, and there's no peace in that. There's no shalom in that. But if you just keep your mind and your thoughts stayed on Him, then He will guard you and you will have shalom. And think about it. If when you're staying in that state, that position, and you're keeping your mind stayed on Him, and He's guarding you and giving you peace and stuff, it changes who you are. It brings on a happier countenance. It makes you a happier person, a more free person. It gives you freedom from anything the enemy has been trying to do. Freedom from things in the past, freedom from things that he's trying to do now. It makes you a free person. And I don't know about you, but me, I'd much rather be around like a free person, somebody like that, who's happy and joyful and stuff like that, than somebody who's just, caught in their own garbage truck going down the street type of thing. I'd rather not be, I don't know where that came from, but seriously, because it's all trash. The negative thoughts are trash. So you want to keep yourself in that specific state of position, keeping yourself stayed on Him. You keep your mind, your thoughts, your actions, your emotions, everything stayed on Him. And what does the Word say? The Word does not lie. And the Word trumps all things. What He says He will do, He's already done it. Everything that He has said in this Word, He's already done it. It's not something that we have to sit and we're waiting for it to happen, or I'm going to wait for this. No, He's already done it. It's up to us to pull it now onto this side of the veil. It's up to us to see it manifest. He will guard me. He's already done that part. It's up to me to do my part, so this will manifest in my life. He's given me shalom. He's already done that. It's up to me to make sure that I ensure that I'm living in shalom every day, that I'm living in shalom up here every day. I think it was, who is it? Joyce Meyer, I believe it was, who said that the battlefield, the biggest place where the battlefield is in your mind. That's the biggest battlefield that any of us will ever have to fight on, is in our mind. And it's because of thoughts. It's because of not taking thoughts captive the way we're supposed to be taking them captive. So, you keep your mind stayed on Him, keep your thoughts right, keep your thoughts pure. And I'm not saying, come on, obviously, the enemy's going to try to bring a negative thought. It's going to happen. Just like the enemy tries to bring fear, it's going to happen. Just like he tries to bring something, it's going to happen. It's all on how we respond to it. I think we were talking about that on Saturday. It's all on how our reaction is to a situation, how our response is going to be to a situation. When it comes down to it, it all lies with us. We're the catcher, pitcher, outfielder, batter, everything. We're everything. All of that, it all comes down to us. And, I know there's many people that it may seem hard for them, it may seem overwhelming, because they've done it all their lives. I mean, I know an individual when I was in college, and in the natural, some of this stuff was already knew about, because studying psychology, you learn a lot of this and stuff in natural psychology. But I remember back when I was in college, there was an individual, and she was in her 60s, and her mind, she had allowed her mind for years, pretty much I guess her entire life, to get so cluttered with negative thoughts, to get so cluttered with mess in her mind because of what people did to her in the past. Like I was saying, resentment and past hurts and that. Years. I mean, I'm talking years. And now this woman's in her 60s. So much of years of this, I don't know what you would call it. I guess for her, obviously, it was a downward spiral type of thing. She was just crashing. That it turned her to be it made her become a completely different individual. And I know that because I knew people who knew her relatives and stuff like that, like her sister, who was older than her, who knew her and knew how she was when she was a child and young adult. But because she didn't take thoughts captive and she allowed what people did to her to stay in her, and she dwelled in it all these years, it changed her. She went from being a happy, laid-back person, I guess, to now being just miserable and bitter, and just life was just blah. And if you think about it, that's really, really sad. All because she didn't take thoughts captive because of what somebody did to her, and allowed this to happen for years, and it actually changed her. There are many people like that in situations like that where they have allowed themselves to be changed because of what other people have did, said, whatever. And what it all comes down to is thoughts. Thoughts are what can either make you or break you. And like I said, this particular woman, she was just a very bitter, unhappy woman. And it's very sad because it didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be that way at all. She had a choice that she could have made, and she chose to make the wrong choice and go down in that direction. And that's why it's having a cluttered mind is it's a very serious thing that we need to make sure that we're decluttering. You know, they say a lot of times too that when you have clutter physical, in the physical part of your life, whether it's, when your house, your house is cluttered or your car is cluttered, they say a lot of times the physical clutter is indicative of some type of mental or emotional clutter that's going on. And, think about it. I know for me, I'm kind of, I'm just one on clean. I'm just one on clean. I can't stand clutter in my house. I know where things are just precisely placed. I know the coffee table is 6 feet out from the wall, and but I know when someone has moved something and they didn't put it back to that spot. It's like, no, that was supposed to go back there. I'm just like that. I'm not a one that enjoys clutter. But in times when things have gotten cluttered, I'll have to say that it causes things not to be peaceful within me. It causes things not to be so happy within me. That's what clutter does to you emotionally. But think about it. So think about if you have a cluttered house and you're seeing that day in and day out. What do you think that's doing to your emotional state or your mind? For most people, it's a stressful thing. It's like, oh my goodness, there's just so much clutter. And then you start to get overwhelmed because you think, all right, well, there's so much of it, then there's nothing I can even do about it. But that's not true. Just like what I was saying in this article. You just take 20 minutes and you start going out, cleaning out. But a lot of times, physical clutter is indicative of some type of emotional or mental or spiritual clutter. So I'm going to end with this. It says, when your mind is cluttered, it wastes your time and mental energy. It also creates mental confusion, distraction, and disorganization that prevents you from creating clear priorities, making decisions, having focus, and being productive. When your mind is cluttered, now think of this. This next statement is very true. When your mind is cluttered, you are not present. Think about it. When your mind is so cluttered with stuff, you're thinking about, you're not present. Your body's there, but you yourself is there. Kind of falls into what we were saying on Saturday, like when you're having a conversation with somebody and you could tell they zoned out, they're just gone somewhere. Well, probably most of the reason why somebody went somewhere is because of the clutter in their mind. They've gone off to thinking, oh, I've got to get this done. It's like, are you listening to me? Oh, sorry. Did you hear a word I said? No, I didn't, because I was thinking about something. So, when your mind is cluttered, you are not present, which causes you to lose connection to yourself, your environment, your relationships, in the moment you are in. So think about that. Think how serious, how costly that could be if you're so caught up in a negative thought, a negative emotion about someone or something, and it costs you to lose out on the moment that you are in. That moment that you are in, that you allowed to be taken from you because you're off over here so involved in a negative thought, you may have missed out on a moment that could have been a blessing. You may have missed out on a moment that could have led to a tighter connection in a relationship. You might have missed out on a moment that Yahweh had intended for you to impart into someone else, but you were so caught up in the clutter of your mind that you missed the moment that you were supposed to be in. It's time to let go of the mental habits that are keeping you from reaching your full potential. In order to build mental muscles and declutter your mind, you need to become intentional about where you place your attention and how you spend your time and energy. Only then can you unravel unhealthy thinking patterns that are keeping you stuck and your mind cluttered. So, with that being said, we've got to realize the seriousness of allowing our minds, our thoughts, to be cluttered. When they're negative, when they're maybe a fear, whatever. Any thought that's unhealthy, if we keep allowing ourselves to go with it and allow our minds to be cluttered with it, we got to realize how serious that is. And we've got to get the cluttered out. Especially, I know that one particular line hit me a little hard when I realized, like, it can distract you from the moment you're in. You don't want a cluttered mind, cluttered thoughts to distract you from something that could have been vitally important. Maybe it was maybe it was without you even knowing it. Maybe that was your last opportunity with an individual. Maybe that could have been the last moment that you had with another person. You got distracted, you got off in a negative thought, and it stole a moment that you were supposed to have with another individual. And then come to find out, you won't even ever see that individual again. That's impactful. All because we had a cluttered mind. All because we allowed a negative thought to take over and we didn't do anything about it. You know, I showed this to Jordan earlier. This had come up on my phone and I thought, you know, this is something I'm gonna save and keep before myself. But it says making the memorable moments for yourself is not a big thing. But you being the key person in others' memorable moment is an everlasting thing. Think about that. Memorable moments for yourself, yeah, that's nice. You know, we all want to have memories that we have that's nice and stuff. But you being the key person in someone else's memorable moment is an everlasting thing. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you get the clutter out. If you declutter your mind of all the negative, of all the trash, of all the whatever. And we all know what Yahweh's been talking to us about, getting right in our lives, getting out of whatever, so that we will be the key person in somebody else's life. So that we will be the key person in creating a memorable moment in another individual that will be everlasting, that will be for eternity. Well, I hope you gathered something out of tonight. I'm glad that you are here with us, and that we will see you on Saturday at 11 a.m. Shabbat Shalom.